Hey Reddit, what did your school waste money on that nobody liked? The large schoolyard at my school had a set of planters in the center. They were basically 4 triangles made of brick that pointed in at each other and created an X shape. People would sit and chat to each other on the benches, teachers and students alike. There was very little litter or vandalism. The plants were kind of pretty insofar as any secondary schooler would care to notice. Once a year, a duck made her nest in one of the planters, and apart from a few, "Oh hey, a duck nest" comments, it was left alone. Then, for some reason, the school decided to rip the planters out. Took them 2/3 of the school year to do it, and blocked off the X walkways, so everyone had to crush by on the outside lanes between classes. Everyone was super curious as to what the planters would be replaced by. Turns out, nothing. They simply bricked over the holes left by the planters and left it as a huge empty space. We didn't even get new benches, so no one had anywhere to sit during our break. People started to miss the plants since the lack of color left the whole area kinda bland. We also kept the old X walkway since stepping over the former planters felt weird. This isn't common knowledge, so I was really the only one incensed by it, but I worked for Cisco Foods as a baker at the university, and the upper echelons of their administration had hired their own personal pastry chef to make these extravagant desserts for their meetings. The pastry chef was legit. She made absolutely amazing desserts of a wide variety every day, loaded them onto a cart, and with her baker's outfit and hat on, she would wheel it up to their daily administration meetings. Her salary was paid for by students of the school, so that the administrators could dine on first-class pastries and desserts made from scratch each day. She was really good at her job, and actually helped me improve in the bakery, but I was so mad her job even existed simply to provide pastries to people who just sat around and decided how the school's money was spent. I obviously didn't make a stink about it to anyone because she was my friend, and I wouldn't ever dream of putting her employment at risk. But I couldn't help feeling like her entire career was to make fat cats fatter, and it just boiled my blood. Laminated ID cards that everyone had to wear around their necks on some dorky ass lanyard. No one effing did it, so they made it punishable by detention. After that, half the students still didn't do it, and the detention hall became so overwhelmed that they began to make backlogs. After a few weeks, not wearing a lanyard gave you a detention 2 months from then. Eventually, detention became so backlogged that students started doing even more severe transgressions because they would have graduated before they could actually be forced to go to detention. After about a month, no one had to wear their ID cards at all anymore. They said it was for security purposes, so no one could sneak into the school. The thing is, you could put literally anything in the lanyard, and no one would check if it was your actual student ID card. I had a blank index card in mine, and no one ever said anything to me. If someone actually wanted to sneak into the school, all they would need is a lanyard, and no one would ever check if it's actually authentic or not. My first high school wasted money on a war. Maybe I should explain. The school where I spent my freshman and sophomore years had 2 parking lots. One which was reserved for faculty and guests. The second one, the place where students could park their cars, was near the back of campus. And although it was larger and arguably more convenient for many reasons, it became the site of a long-running battle. See, one fateful Monday morning, people arrived to discover that dozens of speed bumps had been attached to the asphalt. That probably would have been fine, except for the fact that the mounds in question were much taller than the standard sort, to the point where even the slowest moving vehicle would end up scraping against them. Complaints, from both students and parents, were quickly filed with the administration, but the official response was that nothing would be done. Something was done anyway, though. Nobody ever found out who had been responsible, but a few days later, word started to spread that the speed bumps had been removed. As it turned out, someone, or more likely, a group of someones, had ventured out in the middle of the night, hacked the offending humps from the parking lot, and returned the space to its original state. Needless to say, this didn't sit well with the people in charge of the school, and they wasted no time in taking action. By which I mean that they paid to have new obstacles, which were still too tall, installed. Another removal happened after that. Another reconstruction followed, along with the hiring of a dedicated security guard. To the best of my knowledge, that was when the war finally ended. The ceasefire may have come about because the latest speed bumps were finally short enough to actually get over, but my guess is that the vigilante vandals just gave up. Either way, I'm fairly sure that I wound up experiencing the one moment in history that saw someone being hired for the express purpose of protecting speed bumps. TLDR, in a war between students and administrators, it's the speed bumps that suffer. My school buys so much useless things. or at least when I went to. They dump all their money on the football team. Obviously, the football team doesn't really care, but other people did. One thing that everyone has a common hatred for that the school bought, even the football team, is the inflatable the school got. From what I heard, it costed about $4,000. It's this big A inflatable that people could walk through. The inflatable has the school's mascot on it, and it's just plain weird. There were so many ways the school could have spent that money on, but they chose to spend it on this stupid inflatable that's only used like 3 times a year. Administrative bloat. When my father went to high school in the 1930s, each school had a principal and an office lady. The school board was a bunch of local businessmen who met once a month at the Grange Hall. When I went to high school in the 1970s, each school had a principal with a secretary, a vice principal with a secretary, a dean of boys with a secretary, a dean of girls with a secretary, a dean of students with a secretary, and a full staff of counselors. The school board consisted of full-time politicians who occupied a permanent 2-story building with a full staff. $30,000 from 2 years of fundraising on an LED billboard about 10 feet off a major road. It was so bright that it caused several accidents at night and had to be shut down about 8 months later because it was deemed a safety hazard. I hung out with several guys on the programming team and they figured how to upload memes onto it. They couldn't figure out who did it so no one got in trouble. They bought flags of all the states and put them around this caged-in area full of gravel. They caged in the gravel to stop students from walking across the gravel. They also bought flags in the school colors to line the fence around campus. The only thing is, we were in an area which can get very windy with 0 windshield, so those flags took a beating. By mid-year, they were an ugly, frayed mess. Honorable mention was the bridge they built across the courtyard we weren't allowed to walk across, that they eventually paved over. Shout out to the flagpole a kid did for Eagle Scouts, that was taken down that same year by admin. And big shout out to the admin during my little sister's years there, where they sealed off all the inner hallways doors, and added extra doors outside to stop students from traveling between classes indoors. Don't know what that solved except adding extra minutes onto your travel time between class. I went to a Catholic high school. Very few of the students there were actually Catholic, and went there because the local public school district was terrible. We won some contest or grant, and the school said that they would allow students to pick what the money was spent on. The options were new flooring for the gym, renovate the courtyard next to the chapel into a prayer garden, or renovating the courtyard next to the cafeteria into an outdoor eating space. Most people voted for the new gym floors, and some people voted for the outdoor eating space. I do not know of anyone who voted for the prayer garden. Guess what won? The prayer garden! People, even teachers, were furious as the voting was clearly rigged to give us the appearance of a choice. If they really wanted a prayer garden, they should have just done the work without putting it to a vote. The funny thing about the prayer garden is that they actually made it nice and put benches and plants and whatnot, but it was always locked and never used. Administration would often say during tours, "Oh, look at our lovely prayer garden for students. They voted for it." No, we didn't. Yonder pouches. You put your phone in them so you won't get on it during school. The bad thing, they are magnetically locked. You know when you buy something from a clothing store and they have to take that device on the clothing off with a super strong magnet? Yeah, that's how you open these to get your phone in and take it out. A couple of people had their speaker on the phone destroyed because of these. The worst part is the punishment if you are found with your phone not in a Yonder pouch. If they hear your phone go off in a pouch, or they see you have your phone out in class, or anything of the sort, they take your phone away for 2 days. 2 whole days. You won't have your phone that night, or the next night. If you lose it on a Friday, you will not get it back until Tuesday. We don't do school on Mondays unless it's a snow makeup day. Nobody uses them. We all leave our phones in our cars or shut them down or put them in our backpacks. Of course, the teachers like to try and search inside of the backpacks, which aren't even allowed in classrooms anymore. We also don't have lockers anymore. They tore all of them out and replaced them with shelves and cubbies to set backpacks on. It is safe to say that quite a few things have been stolen. My school kinda sucks. My school wasted so much money on plastic ID cards that you were supposed to scan into every room to assure that you were there, and the IDs were also keys to get into the buildings. If you didn't have your card, you didn't get in, and also get in-school suspension. It wasn't a bad system because you could easily take a photo of your ID to scan into rooms, but you'd have to bum a buddy to get into a building. But once there were internet problems, the whole system would shut down. And living in a rural wheat town, you could expect wind and rain and tornadoes and all that fun junk. Oh, it's time to shine. When my high school was being built, there was a huge automatic flagpole in the design and an indoor pool. They only had money for one of these outstanding features. The pool would have been used by the whole district for swim meets and other fun activities. The flagpole just made the school look like a mall from an 80s teen movie. They left the decision up to the principal. He picked the flagpole. Every other school in the district hated us because of that stupid pole. The best part? It didn't work in the rain. It didn't work in the rain in a southeastern coastal city where it rains like 200 days a year. My country is still a developing country, so many new technologies are not implemented and properly operated. 2 years ago, my high school installed an ID and a fingerprint scanner at the school main entrance gate so they can track whether the student came to school or not. Every student had to pay like $5 to $10 to get a personal ID card and to get their fingerprint in the system. The principal was very serious with this in the first week. Then, a couple weeks later, the students started forgetting their ID card. Some of them purposely annoyed the teachers, as if they didn't know how to use the machine or even put their fingers in the scanner. Then, the machine started malfunctioning and eventually just stopped working one day and stood at the entrance gate, all dusty. A year later, they did this again and stopped in a month. I don't know what's happening now. When I started secondary school, we had a canteen with proper home-style food being served, cooked fresh, real meat and vegetables, good portion sizes. All the students loved it, and it was well used. School decided to replace it with this fast food style setup, with processed burgers and fries to try and appeal to the kids and up the prices too. Within a month, nobody visited the canteen anymore. Practically every kid in the school started bringing food from home. It took 3 months till they changed everything back again. Massive expense for absolutely no reason. I went to a school where the fundraiser we held received anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. The textbooks we were using in some of our classes were really out of date and low quality, and there were just many things that they could have upgraded. So I was expecting them to spend the money on something like that. But you know what they spent the money on? Benches. Effing benches. Effing benches! These benches, mind you, were benches that no one ever sat on. Like, they were all in the way in the corner of the recess field. And most of the time, teachers wouldn't even let us sit there. I'm so happy I left that school. Lockers that didn't even work. Back in 2017, we had some school funds that were supposed to go into some new improvements to the school facilities. Some background information. In Singapore, it's part of secondary school culture to decorate our classrooms inside and out during certain parts of the year. For example, Chinese New Year's, some school event. That's part of team building. Every class had something unique about them that they could show off to the rest. On with the story. Our classrooms all have windows facing the corridor outside. Decorations were usually placed right under the windows so people walking by can see them. The new lockers were installed right outside our classrooms, covering the walls and blocking the decorations. The locks were made out of some cheap A metal that oxidized within 1 week or so of use, and the lockers were made of cheap plastic. Nobody even used them because you could just grab the whole lock, twist it, pull it, and then manually open them up. Because even the glue attaching them to the doors were weak. Eventually, we used some of the lockers for free without even paying for them. Because there's no way they deserved our money. We just picked one locker and then randomly chucked things inside so that no one would steal, like our schoolwork. It was hilarious. My school basically had no proper heating or air conditioning. In Minnesota, most winters were cold enough for teachers to hand out blankets in some classes. Spring made you grateful for gross water fountains as you were sweating buckets. After a scandal involving underage girls, we were given a new vice principal. Her first decree? New windows. For what I've heard, it was a lot of money spent. We had to deal with construction during some classes for a good few months. Some classes relocated due to them working, and what was the end result? Windows that can only open on the first floor, with black see-through shades. Let me say it again, with no real air conditioning, we had sun-absorbing black shades sweltering us even in the spring and fall. Couldn't even open up a window on 2 floors to let the breeze in. And they couldn't even block out the sun's rays enough to make a classroom dark enough for a projector to function. Naturally, just about everyone despised her from the start. My school buys anything and everything when it comes to athletic programs. When it comes to our fine arts programs, band, theater, BPA, BOA, UIL, etc., they're stingier with the money than anyone in the world. They only start to give some sort of cash whenever these programs go farther than regional matches or state-level matches. But when the football team loses for an entire season, they're willing to spend $20,000 and up for the football team. Yeah. So the most stupid thing the school bought was the remodeling for the cafeteria, which was repainted non-school colors, and the new improved football field. Goats. Don't ask. Okay, you wanted context, and you asked nicely, and made me laugh. I went to a trendy school in the 1980s during the height of the UK's teaching union striking. So we pretty much abandoned essay writing, algebra, all the usual things you might teach teenagers, and instead our headmaster brought goats, and made us learn to milk them. And they were recalcitrant buggers, as goats tend to be, and ate a lot of things they were given. Homework? Yes, really. And school dinners, and so on. And a lot of things they were not supposed to eat. The gate to their pen, hence the chaos, gold nets, door frames, and one child's finger, the top joint. So they were a nuisance, didn't teach us. A lot of us already knew how to milk cows anyway, and the rest will never want to know. And they ultimately cost the school a ton of money, because of the inevitable compensation payout. Taking the carpet and all the chairs and tables out of our library and adding these ultra-bright LED lights. It was a low-income area school where kids depended highly on the resources within the library, so everybody used it. But when they took the carpet out and replaced it with the type of tile you find in an ER room, along with the LED lights, made it feel like a shady hospital that you wouldn't want to go into if your life depended on it. Basically took all the comfort out of the room. Plus, you had to crouch to use a computer.